One of the most interesting places where these culture wars are sort of happening, but they're maybe being won by the right, is in Eastern Europe. And many people in America and in Britain and across Europe are looking towards countries like Hungary and Poland. I was in Poland recently, did some films there, and it's absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure you've been there and spoken to many people, as to how they're dealing with these issues. Do you view the Eastern European model as something that America and Britain and other places should copy and look to and say, well, this is actually how we're meant to deal with this stuff?
No, I don't say we should copy them. I mean, every society has its own reasons for coming to the situation it's in. My own observation in Central and Eastern Europe is that countries that had to suffer under communism until 1989, 1990, are um, slightly more immune to some of the worst excesses of the ideology I described. If you had to suffer the realities of what Marxism becomes in communism, you're less likely to fall for the, more weakling versions that are, social justice activism and more. So my observation is that these countries are have proved themselves to be they have a slight inoculation. And also, of course, they have less population difference than we now do in Britain, Western Europe, and America. And a lot of this stuff of the pushing of the diversity, the equity, equality, revenge, social justice is a result of, as I say, increasingly diverse populations. Um, so I don't say that there's a model we just take, but I would like us in a country like Britain to be able to say no more. I'd like us to be able to say we're not listening to entirely hostile critics who don't know what they're talking about when they're talking about our country. I'd like to see much more pushback. I'd like to see the ignoramuses taken on instead of being allowed to just lie about the British past. Like, I mean, there's this one where they say things like, you owe money for slavery. And as I wrote recently in one of the papers, we don't owe anything for slavery. We don't. The debt's paid. The debt was paid a long time ago. Um, and if we have people coming again and again at us saying that a debt we paid centuries ago needs to be paid again, instead of people falling for it or entertaining that, I wish people would just say, let me educate you on what this country, Britain, did to abolish the slave trade and how much it cost us in blood and treasure. I'd like to see them do that. I'd like to see them stand up for the people who lost their lives in the past fighting that horrible trade, and trying to suppress it around the world. I'd like to see them standing up for the British servicemen who died trying to stamp out the slave trade, for the average British household that paid more in goods throughout the 19th century because we didn't buy from slave markets. I'd like to see people able to do that. I'd like to see us being able to take pride in our past without having to look at the whole thing through this cringing, hostile lens. And to that extent, there is something to learn from parts of Central and Eastern Europe, which is, when you have things to be proud of, why not be proud of them? Why have to beat yourself up? Why be in this weird situation that we seem to be in, of being as I say at one point in the book, being a sort of masochist who's forgotten their safe word?